Going back to making fear your friend, you've got this alert system. And all it is, if you can just stop for one moment and look at it as, okay, what is this fear telling me? Listen to it like a friend. Your friend is freaking out, right? You come up to your friend and they're freaking out and they can't even, they're blubbering and blah, 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 and they're just going a mile a minute or, pacing back and forth and you're just in this freak out mode. And what do? A lot of times you'll grab them or say, okay, breathe. Let's get you back into this space where breathe so you can tell me what it is. Even a child, when they're with the baboon lip going in and out, crying and they can't speak. So it's getting into that space of, okay, what is this data telling me? And if you look at that fear, it usually has a place where it resides in the body. So if it's up in the head space, or if it's in the heart space, or if it's down in the gut space, those are three very specific areas that deal with three very specific forms of fear. So we can get into that.
Hello, welcome to Creativity Boost Podcast. Today I'm super excited because we're going to be discussing something that pretty much everyone has battled with at one point in your life, or is currently battling with, or will battle with at some point in the future. And that thing we're going to be talking about is fear, right? How to fight the fears, as people popularly ask, how do I fight my fears? Should you even be fighting your fears? Well, these and more are the things we are going to be unpacking in today's conversation. And there's no better person to talk about this with me than Nicole Majik. Hi, Nicole. You want to tell us a bit about yourself?
Sure, I can do that. Thank you for having me on the show, and I look forward to hopefully delivering some great nuggets to the listeners out there, especially about fear. A little bit about me. I used to be a chemist. I was a chemist for 16 years and in pharmaceuticals. I almost died from mercury poisoning, so I left chemistry. I ended up becoming a financial advisor for a handful of years, but I was building up my business also, which I've had now I'm going on 17 years come April. And really just helping people overcome their fears, step into authenticity, find their passions and their purposes, and really just unleash who they truly are so that they can find aligned success.
All right. Thank you so much for that. Now, do you want to kick us off by actually helping us define fear? Because one thing I know for sure is that most people think they know what fear is, but many people don't actually know what fear is. So what exactly is this monster that we call fear? Can you help us nip that in the bud?
Ooh, yeah, let's talk about that. We're going to have to pick it apart a little bit because fear is something that people feel, right? It's a sensation within the body that tends to bring a negative reaction within us because it's bringing up something that's scary, that maybe we don't want to look at, maybe we don't want to see, hear, or experience. So we feel this thing called fear, and it comes out within us so many different ways because that whole fight, flight, right? Fight or flight, or, fawn type of experiences. Are you going to flee the scene? Are you going to, try to avoid it? Are you going to fight it? Are you going to stand up and just throw down fisticuffs if you have to, right? Or are you going to freeze and just be in that space of, I don't know what to do and I'm frozen in it? And then they say fawn is, if you pass out and lay down kind of thing. So fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, it's all the same thing what fear is. And when we can start looking at fear as not this negative energy, but something that is there that's supposed to be our friend, causing a stir within us to amplify an awareness, just to say, hey, I think something's off here, right? So we can go down a few different avenues when it comes to making fear your friend.
Wow, that is such a phenomenal perspective. Because I think one of the biggest misconceptions people have about fear is that they think fear is anxiety, and so they look at fear from a negative perspective. And I've come to discover that fear is actually totally is similar to anxiety, but it's not exactly anxiety. While anxiety is, you know, caution over a future imagined danger, fear is caution over a real and present danger that could cause you to either freeze or fight or fly, or do something to just protect yourself. So thank you so much for setting that straight. Now, talking about making fear your friend, like you raised, can you tell us a bit more about what that is?
Absolutely. So when we look at what is fear, so let's break it down beside that sensation. What is fear? Fear is energy. That's it. So if we can
Hmm.
bring it down to just the minimum scientific form of what is it, it's an energy, just like anything else.
Hmm.
Energy, vibration, and frequency. That's what everything is. So when we look at fear as the energy, the frequency, the vibration, it's a low vibration.
Hmm.
The frequency has to do with, the oscillation and the sensation that that vibration gives, the frequency of the vibration, how quick it comes through,
Hmm.
so to speak, in its waveform.
Hmm.
And then when we look at the energy of it, it's that overall energy of what happens when we feel fear, and that's different for each person, depending on the circumstance, depending on how much in danger we are. So the alert goes off that we are in danger. That's
Hmm.
really what it comes down to. Whether this is a true danger or a perceived danger,
Hmm.
that has to do with your belief system within your body.
Hmm.
Okay? So when we're looking at fear as an energy, what it's doing is it's this alert system that says, "Hey, something is different." So if we
Hmm.
can look at it like that as data, this
Hmm.
is just our body's way to say, "Hey, something is different. We're not used to this." Flashing lights.
Hmm.
And with that, when we can look at the situation without getting emotionally riled up, right? So when I work with my clients, I teach them how to look at it as data. Let's
Hmm.
look at the data. I've got clients that are teaching their kids this now, which is perfect because I love hearing this, that the
Hmm.
kids, especially kids with autism or on the spectrum, it's been super helpful with the way that I deliver that, and the way that somebody can also help their child is being able to get it into that space to look at what's the data, what are the facts, and then staying out of that emotional rise, which then keeps you out of perpetual fear, which can be bouts of anxiety and even depression and things like that, right? So going back to making fear your friend, you've got this alert system. And all it is, if you can just stop for one moment and look at it as, okay, what is this fear telling me?
Hmm.
Listen to it like a friend. Like your friend is freaking out, right? You come up to your friend and they're freaking out and they can't even, they're blubbering and blah, 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 and they're just going a mile a minute, or pacing back and forth, and they're just in this freak out mode. And what do? A lot of times you'll grab them or say, okay, breathe. Let's get you back into this space where breathe so you can tell me what it is. Even a child, when they're
Hmm.
with the baboon lip going in and out, crying, and they can't speak. So it's getting into that space of, okay, what is this data telling me? And if you look at that fear, um, it usually has a place where it resides in the body.
Hmm.
So if it's up in the head space, or if it's in the heart space, or if it's down in the gut space, those are three very specific areas that deal with three very specific forms of fear.
Hmm.
So we can get into that if you'd like, because it's identifying that and seeing what the body is telling you that then says, what do we do next?
Hmm. That's
Okay.
that's super amazing, and I like the fact that you brought that perspective about the three forms of fear. But before we even dive into that, I want us to unpack the concept of making fear your friend a little bit more, because the popular
Okay.
perception is that you actually fight your fears like an enemy, but now you're bringing a different perspective. You're shifting the paradigm, and you're telling us to make fear our friend. Where did that come from? How did you come about that?
Yeah, so when I started working with different fears for myself, this is how my business all came about, is working through my own stuff and being able to find easy ways through my intuition and guidance and my near-death experiences to help people shift very quickly into aligned spaces that help them go through transition quickly, transformation very fast and easily, and be able to embrace that transformation so that it creates positive success for them. So when we look at making fear your friend, it's where we fight our fears there that we're resisting, right? So if we are resisting, I'm going to give you my scientific formula. So as a scientist, I do tend to speak in terms of science and metaphysics and like chemistry terms sometimes. But if you look at what is it that you want, what is your desire has to have aligned action. So your desire plus taking aligned action towards that goal is going to help you get results. But what stands in the way? What stands in the way is resistance.
Hmm.
So we have to reduce and or eliminate resistance if possible. If we can eliminate it completely, that is fantastic. But we want to reduce it to its minimum, so that we can overcome that. Because when we take what we want and we couple that with the aligned action while reducing resistance, we are going to have greater results. This is why when people get into that hump, their fears take over, and then they give in to the fear. So instead of they think that they're fighting it, but that's basically you're trying to use some willpower, which is like a short battery life, and trying to overcome fear with more fear. You
Okay,
see?
now thank you so much for that. Now let's go into the three forms of fear and how to deal with each of these three forms.
Yeah. This is a really fun part. So I'm going to actually teach you a little bit through this lesson on how to also make aligned decisions, because
Hmm.
understanding where these fears are coming from and what they mean and knowing how they affect your body, you are going to be able to identify if your body's lying to you because it's trying to make a decision based on an illusion or fear. Okay?
Hmm.
So our fear is there to protect us, right? We can agree on that. It's
Hmm.
there to protect us in some way. However, it doesn't protect us if it's sabotaging us.
Hmm.
So this is how we subconsciously sabotage, is if we aren't embracing that fear and addressing the problem.
Hmm.
So when we move through the fear and process that fear, we can eliminate it. But when we push it aside and we try to fight it and move through it and get into this space, but we're carrying it with us anyway, we're not getting rid of it. We're carrying it forward so that it can crop up again. So what we want to do is, if you're thinking, um, if you're in a space where that fear resides in your head, so if you focus on that fear, you can just even ask it. You can talk to it like a friend and say, okay, so where are you in my body? And you'll feel something. So if it's in the head, that's related to anger or some form of anger, resentment, frustration. All these different forms of anger reside up in the head area. Down in the throat and the heart area is grief and sadness. So you'll feel it in the lungs, in the heart, in the neck, or, sometimes coming from the ears down. That is grief and sadness. And then when we move into the gut area, that is about worry about the past, worry about the future. So whether we're carrying the worries and woes and traumas from the past, and we're worrying that that's going to happen again in the future, that's where we feel it in the guts, right? So sometimes we'll get, I remember, before doing a presentation when I was in high school, even, you'd get that rumble in your tummy, like, oh my God, I think I have to go to the bathroom, right? The bladder is about fear and worry too. So you might have to go to the bathroom, or maybe you have to move your bowels because, all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, this is affecting me in the GI system. And it does affect you that way. It affects you very physically. So head, heart, gut, and knowing what that is. So if that is in the head with anger, we want to ask, okay, that means something requires to be changed. There's something that's frustrating you, angering you. There's maybe a boundary that keeps getting crossed, and something needs to be changed. So we have to say, what in our life can we do to change that situation? So we have to take an action to change it. Once we figure what that is, then we can start taking that action, and we eliminate that fear because we know now what to do. If it's in that heart area about grief and sadness, that means something still needs to be let go, to be released. And if we can release whatever that is, and you can ask your body that, what is it that needs to be released? And we can then find that peace, release that energy. Sometimes we have some crying to do, and that's okay. Acknowledging that those tears are cleansing, clearing tears is really important in allowing and surrendering to that release. And when we go into the stomach area, the guts area, that fear and that worry, that is something needs to be acknowledged. So what is it that you've been trying to avoid, or just, not pay attention to? And now it's time to acknowledge it and pay attention to it, because it's calling for that change through that acknowledgement. Sometimes it's, oh my goodness, I just need to, XYZ. And then you do that and it's gone. It's just an acknowledgement saying, hey, this needs your attention. It's like a little kid that's like, mom, or dad. They're gonna be there pulling on your shirt saying, mom, dad. And until you say, yes, child, what is it that you need? What do you have to tell me? And just look at it that way. Your inner child is coming out in these instances saying, I need attention. And that is really what it comes down to. So when we make that our friend, giving it the attention that it deserves so we can move on, that gives us that space. Now, when you have a question, a decision to make, you can use those three centers, the head, heart, and the gut. You've got to be able to understand what that means for you. So you want a yes or no, and a yes or no from the guts area and the head and the heart. So if you sit there and you say, pick a different name that's not yours. You can say, my name is Nicole Majik, right? If you're focusing on your head and you say, my name is Nicole Majik, you're going to have a sensation that's up there that says, no, it's not. And then you can say what your real name is, and then see how that feels, right? So you know what that looks like, what that feels like, right? And so do that for your head. My name's Nicole Majik. No, it's not. Okay, my name is this. Say that. And now you have a sensation that says yes. Okay, now you do that for the heart. My name's Nicole Majik. My name is really my name. And feel what the difference is there. And then do the same for the guts. And you're going to get a very specific sensation for a yes and a no. And then when you have your question, ask it in that yes or no form. And and go ahead and ask it and get yes, yes, yes. If you're getting all three yeses or you're getting all three nos, you know that you have the answer. If you're getting two yeses and one no somewhere, ooh, I got balloons there. Hooray! If you're getting two yeses and one no, what is happening there is you have your answer, the yes or the no, but that one area is lying to you. That means if you have the head and the gut both say yes and your heart is saying no, there's some grief or sadness that's holding on there, that's trying to protect you, and that's saying, I don't want to be hurt again. We're not doing this. Okay?
Yeah.
Does that make sense? If the heart and the guts are saying yes and the head is saying no, then there's something there that needs to be changed, that there's an anger or resentment that's lingering there, that, okay, boundaries have been crossed in the past and I'm not going there again. If your head and your heart say yes and your guts say no, there's a fear, there's something in there that needs to be acknowledged in order for you to move forward. So just acknowledging that maybe there was a past trauma, or maybe there was, this past thing that happened that you are worried that it's going to happen again if you do this. And that's not true. And when you look at the divine aligned action to take, it's going to feel very good, and it's going to transform your life to be able to say, okay, I'm going to work through this thing that's presenting itself and take that aligned action, because you will never, ever be wrong. This is why when people self-sabotage by listening to a part of the body that's basing the decision off of fear, then we find later that was some kind of self-sabotaging effort that we say, oh, I thought I was listening to my intuition, but really I should have done something different. Now I'm not trusting myself to move forward and make decisions. So you see how it propagates itself.
Yeah, that's more like a master class. Did you have a PhD in fear? Because you broke it down so masterfully, and I think someone listening to this out there, you need to listen to this over and over again to really grab and absorb all of that information, because that was a lot. Now, do you want to tell us like how this has worked for you in the past? Is there a story that you can relate to that could make this come alive for someone out there?
Absolutely. So I probably have a million stories in that. So that probably did give me a PhD in fear. And just so the audience out there, I do have a free YouTube video on that very thing that breaks it down and helps you walk through it. So you can listen to that as many times as you want. It's free out there on my Majik LLC official YouTube. Now, when it comes down to the fear and utilizing these different things, I grew up, I was pretty timid and quiet, and I didn't want to make a mistake, because there was a program in me that said, if you were wrong, you were stupid. If you didn't get straight A's, you were stupid. If you didn't get straight A's, you weren't going to amount to anything. So there was this whole thing in my family that, it bred type A personalities of you've got to do everything at the very top. I always thought I was not very smart, even though all of my testing put me in the top 1% across the nation.
Wow.
Right? And I was in like these gifted kid programs and all this stuff. And yet I didn't feel like I was that kid or that smart or whatever. I just always looked at myself as just another person, right? But when we look at the fear, I was petrified to be wrong, even just raising my hand to give an answer in class. So I created this thing where I had to know everything in order to then present anything. And if you look at me now, people are like, I could not even imagine you being that kid, because you're so outgoing, you're so this, you're so, just out there and authentic and empathic and all of these things that it was using my fear to understand why am I feeling like this? And even back then, the first time that I can remember like pushing through that fear, I was embracing it and like scared to death to embrace it at the same time. But I was in class and I had this super fear of being wrong if I raised my hand. But I'm like, why am I like this? I need to get over myself, because it was propagating into people were taking advantage of me. And I was just having this awareness as a 12-year-old kid that all these things propagated from my fear of not standing up for myself or being able to feel like I can speak, and even if I'm wrong. So I forced myself to raise my hand, and I would get sweaty and clammy and oh my God. And I'd just raise my hand whether I knew the answer or not. And then I got called on, and I'd be like having this like palpitations inside.
Yeah.
And then I remembered my fear was I'd raise my hand and think to myself, what if I only think I'm right? Because I would only raise my hand if I knew I was right. But then I was saying to myself, but what if I only think I'm right? So when I raised my hand one time and I gave an answer and it was wrong, I was like, oh, okay, well, that wasn't so bad. And then the kid behind me had said, well, I thought it was that too. And he said it out loud. And then a couple other people were like, yeah, me too. And I thought to myself, okay, well, that was really easy, even though I was wrong, and it was okay because other people thought the same thing. So big deal. Right. And then we all just learned what the real answer was. And fast forwarding that into, speaking in front of larger and larger groups. I even I took a comedy class because I just wanted to see if I could get up on stage in front of people and like deliver jokes just to see if I could get a laugh and do it without freaking out. And it was pretty cool because I got up there and there were like somewhere between 200 and 300 people there or something like that. And people were coming up to me after, and that was the first time I had been on stage doing that. I'd been on stage like speaking before, but that was for my work or for, my business. And it was so easy, And if you just embrace it and say, okay, I'm just doing this for me and let's see where it goes. That's it. It's whatever the data is. Look at the data. What does it tell you?
Wow. So, in a nutshell, you're saying use fear as fuel to propel your journey to where you want to go. Now, specifically for people who have gifts, skills, ideas, talents, and they want to manifest these gifts in creative ways, they want to manifest their creativity, they want to go from idea to increased income, they want to go from concept to cash flow, they want to go from creation to catastrophic success, but there's some fear holding them back. What can you say to them to release the brakes, that will help them release the brakes and go for their goals or reach for their dreams?
Oh, yeah, that's a good one because there are some things that you can consciously do. Okay, so if you can identify, have the awareness that you have a fear. And fear will show up in different ways. You'll get that sensation that you're actually scared, or it will show up in forms of procrastination or not feeling so good,
Yeah.
lethargy. Just, even if your mind, here's the funny part, even if your mind says, oh my God, I'm so excited to do this. I want this, right? So you want to start a certain business and you're fired up and you love that thing. And then all of a sudden your body locks up and says, not today. I can't do that. I'm not going
Yeah.
there. Or I'm tired. I'm so tired.
Yeah.
Or there's procrastination that, oh, I have to do this first. Or, oh, let me just sit down and rest. And there's this thing where the body has this muscle memory of doing certain things and not going into those realms. So even when your mind has been made up, the body still has to follow. So treat the body gently.
Hmm.
Identify that you have a fear. see if you can identify where that fear is residing in your body and correlate that to what type of sensation it is causing in your body, because that tells a lot about the belief around it. Okay? Because the belief is what we want to change.
Yeah.
Now, if it's something that's you're able to do consciously, those steps are going to help you get there to be able to process through it. If you're finding that you have a really deep-seated belief in there that's causing subconscious behaviors that you can't identify what it is that you're doing, that's something that you need somebody else for. Even myself, if I identify that there's something going on, that I have like a pattern that I need to go into my subconscious, I will get a colleague to sit with me and say, this is what I've been recognizing, let's go, right? So we've got to go into that subconscious realm, because it's really hard to analyze it and be in subconscious at the same time. It's like flipping a light switch on and off at the same time. You can't have both, right?
Yeah.
So if you need subconscious help, that's where you want to reach out to a coach, reach out to, somebody who can do that in a gentle fashion, because there are I've heard of some things out there. I had a client come on back to me last year saying they went to somebody and they released all this stuff, and it was like a ridiculous number. I don't know if it was, 28, 38, or 58 things all in one sitting. And I was like, do you know who you are? And they were like, that's what I'm freaking out about. I don't have a sense of who I am. I'm like, because you didn't have a sense to process any of these things and allow your authenticity to shine through. So we had to, reverse engineer a few things, but that's okay. That can also be taken care of. But you want to give yourself some grace. So find somebody who's going to be able to help you in that area. Sit there and hold that space for you to be authentic and ask the right questions for you to get there. Because there's some questions that need to be answered and your subconscious has to answer them. So you can't ask those things and answer them at the same time. So that's really the difference between I help people, I give them the tools to do the conscious work on their own, and I help them release the subconscious stuff at the same time.
Wow, thank you so much for that. And
You're
on
welcome.
a final note, I'd like to bring a question to you for someone out there who has been fighting his or her fears in whatever endeavor they're on. Maybe they're writing a book that never gets finished because of this same fear that has brought about procrastination, that has brought about lots of other problems that causes them never to get anything done, whether it's a book, whether it's an app, whether it's a business, whether it's, a dream they're pursuing, whether it's, a course they're studying. What do you have to say to such a person that's constantly trying to fight your fear, but always keep, losing that fight?
Ooh, get some help. Um, but what you can do on your own. Okay, so I like to give, here's what you can do on your own, and then you can figure out, do you need any additional help to this? So what I'll say is, sit down when you can be in a quiet space, get your pen and paper out, okay? Not digital. There's magic in actually writing things out. And because our brains are supercomputers and they want to solve problems, you can use that in your favor. So sit down, no distractions. Be okay being quiet with yourself. And even take a few deep breaths, or whatever it is that you need to center yourself. Light some incense if that's what you like. Whatever gets you in that safe mode. Put your pen to your paper and write down some questions, one at a time. And you might start with, why am I procrastinating? Or what is it that I'm fearing when I try to get this thing done, right? What is it that I'm fearing? What is it that I'm avoiding? So whatever it is that you feel that you are doing, write that down in in the what is it or why is it form. And then just start writing. It doesn't matter what comes. You might be sitting there thinking, I really want to do this laundry. Said no one ever. But I really want to get this laundry done. Or just start writing and let your pen fly across that paper for as long as it needs to, because you are going to find that sometimes nonsense comes out, but gold comes out somewhere in there. Keep doing that and go to the next question. You'll uncover these stages of things, of why you're doing something, what you might want to put your attention to, what can you overcome first, those types of things. Just go with that flow around what it means and what to do next. Because sometimes, let's say you're writing that book, if you're sitting there and you're trying to force words to come out, they're not going to come out, and that's okay. It's good that they're not coming out, because if you're forcing it, you're not in the flow. And you know what happens when you are in the flow? The words that spew forward onto those pages that you're creating, that's what's connecting to the reader. And that's why it can be super powerful for the reader to read those specific words. If you are forcing the generation of these paragraphs and chapters, no one's going to want to read it anyway.
Yeah,
So sit down and ask, what is it that I need to do for myself?
absolutely. Thank you so much, Nicole. I think that would be a great place to call it for today. And for you listening to us on the other side, I believe you found some value in all that we've said today about fear. Use your fear as fuel to propel you to your destination, and you'll be happy you did. I'm going to leave it there today, and I encourage you to drop some comments about some things that are holding you back, some things that you feared all along in your journey. If you're watching this on YouTube, and if you're listening to this on an audio platform or somewhere else, I encourage you to subscribe, share this with someone else, and just keep the conversation going. And I'll see you in our next episode on Creativity Boost. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. I'm going to see you next time. Until then, have a good one, and bye bye.
Hi, guys.